What's up, guys? Welcome back to FitBodySecrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and a ton of tips and tricks to help you guys on your fitness journey. And I got to start by just telling y'all about my own journey, because what good would I be as a coach if I didn't tell you that I'm on my own journey as well? I full-heartedly believe in self-development, self-improvement, and it's why I love what I do. It's not so much for the clients that lose the 5 or 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds. It's the person they become in the pursuit of that goal. And I'm on my own journey. And in a lot of ways, I think I've had a lot of journeys. And this one has been probably the most difficult one for me because, in previous times when I've tried to work on this goal specifically, it came kind of naturally just based on where I was in my life. And this time it just hasn't really come that naturally. Earlier this year, I started a Gains Train podcast episode series, and haven't really been as diligent on updating everybody on that. And I know that some of you guys are my listeners and followers, do want to kind of likely know what's going on and where I'm at in my journey. So that's kind of what I want to start with before I get into weight loss resistance. And I know it's quite the opposite of what a lot of you guys are dealing with, but I'm going to be honest, it's the same shit. It's the same exact problems. On the opposite end of the spectrum still lives the same struggles. So earlier this year, like I said, I had set out to gain some weight, and it was coming more from a health perspective that I don't necessarily feel bad. I like how I look. But my body was just saying otherwise. So I started to get some injuries last year. Health was going negatively. I eat a ton of food, but I like to train. I like working out. I have athletic goals, and unintentionally lost some weight last year and started to kind of see my body break down. And I knew that I needed to put on a little bit of weight to see if that would help with hormones. But this year is just like, it's been hard. It's been hard to like put the focus in because it's a difficult change to make. I know that some people are like, oh, like, what do you, so just go eat a cheeseburger. Like, you know what? Like, it's not that easy. Like, because at the end of the day, I live by the principles I teach, which is we should be eating a high quality whole food diet. I don't want to put a bunch of shit in my body. And again, I want to feel good in my day. So without actually consciously focusing on like calories and macros and getting the food in, it's been hard to commit to putting weight on because I'm a hard gainer, so I like to exercise. I like to move. I deal with anxiety, and movement is one of the biggest things that help me with that. I don't take medication. And, but as much as I've seen a ton of improvements in blood biomarkers, my injuries are starting to get better. My weight still has kind of stayed the same. And I wanted to see it start to go up. And I just kind of recommitted myself to it again. I'm like, you know what? This is not going to get easy at any point. Like, some life is always going to bring me a reason why I can't commit to something. So, and with everything that's been going on in my life, I'm like, you know what? There's just no better time. Like, just start. Like, I didn't think about it. I just was like, it's time to go. And I'm on a mission, and I feel really excited about it. And I think that, I know this is not about today's episode, but if you're out there struggling with like knowing when the right time to start is, I do think that there is a piece of motivation that everybody needs. Motivation is usually what starts. You can't expect it to stay. Like, that newness isn't going to stay. But when it feels right, you'll know, because what I feel right now is excitement in the process of change. And the work isn't feeling like, oh my God, this is going to be really overwhelming. I don't feel fearful. I feel excited about the changes, excited about experimenting, excited about not being perfect, like just really excited for the journey. And it comes down to like not being happy with where you're at. And I wasn't. I feel like there were some things that I was starting weren't feeling great. And so now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm ready to, make some changes. So anyways, I'm looking forward to keeping you guys updated on my journey because just like you guys, I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. And if you're a gym goer like me, I want to see some wins in the gym. So that's what I'm after right now. But today we are going to be talking about something very opposite. I guess it's opposite because I'm a little bit weight gain resistant, I guess you can call it. But today what we're going to be talking about is weight loss resistance. this is something that I do see very commonly, and it's a specific group of people, a specific prototype or an avatar client. And oftentimes when I work with these clients, it does have to be a lot more specific in terms of the changes that I make. And I think it's really, really, really important for people to understand that this is why taking your nutrition seriously is important. Okay. Like you don't want to just go online and find some random online calculator, just start following a diet plan when you don't know what's going on with your body because you could make it worse. In fact, we can talk about this with the gut. I got clients that come to me with gut issues and they're told just to throw a probiotic on top of it when sometimes throwing a probiotic on top of it might just be adding more fuel to the fire. So it's really important to know what you're dealing with, what you're starting with. You should always have a professional look at things, especially if you suspect weight loss resistance. Now, there are some people that are just gonna be fine. It's like just comes off of them. And I think that a lot of people listening to this episode might find themselves envious of those clients where it feels like it doesn't matter what they do, they just make a small change and their body changes or they lose weight. And like, why am I so different? So today, I really want to go into some of the factors that I see common with weight loss resistance, explain to you guys exactly what it is, how it shows up, and hopefully give you guys some ideas and things that you guys can be changing in your life to help you overcome this. I would like to call it a condition, but it is a condition. So, and the most important thing is as you guys are listening to these things, I know there's going to be a lot of information. I try and keep it as simple as possible, but you guys have to also realize that I want you to pick the marbles that matter most. And I'll kind of go through those things as well. I think the other pitfall that people fall into is like they look for the one thing and they get super hyper focused on one thing, and sometimes they're focusing on the wrong thing, and it's like literally going to drive you 10 miles in the wrong direction only to have to turn around and start over again. So we don't want to do that. So I will try and offer you as much direction as I can in terms of what you need to be focusing on the most, no matter who you are, so that you know exactly what to focus on so that you're not overwhelmed. Okay, so first and foremost, what exactly is weight loss resistance? Essentially, it's exactly what it sounds like, an individual who struggles to lose weight despite following a healthy diet and exercising regularly. And this might be very common and in the CrossFit community, so in the CrossFit community, guys, bust your ass. You're going to the gym 5-6 days a week, you're hitting the classes, you're hitting some PRs, but like you're just not seeing diet, you're not seeing body changes, you're not losing weight. Maybe you do eat really clean. Maybe you do really try and focus on a whole food diet. Yeah, maybe you try and have your 1 or 2 nights a week where you enjoy some meals out, but you can't figure out why. It doesn't matter what you do, your diet is just not helping you lose weight. And those are probably like the two things that can be so frustrating, is like putting in the work and not seeing results in the gym, and putting in the work and not seeing the results from your work in the kitchen. And there's a couple of things, or a number of things that really can lead to weight loss resistance. And this is where I want to start because this is the most important thing that I feel like you guys all need to understand. And you might find that you can check boxes on multiple of these things. And as I'm going through them, I'm going to end the episode by showing you guys how we can take I don't want to say a one approach, but like there's some very basic things you guys can change that will hopefully impact more than one of these things. So even if you can check every single one of these things off, it might just be 1 or 2 simple changes that you make to your diet and lifestyle that will help you a ton. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is probably the most prevalent, and that is going to be hormone imbalances. And the hard thing about addressing hormone imbalances is that it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario, because sometimes diet and lifestyle can cause hormone imbalances. And then also hormone imbalances can affect how you diet and how your lifestyle is. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg scenario, but we do want to make sure we are focusing on both of them. So if you are somebody who has not had lab work done in a long time and you suspect weight loss resistance, I would highly recommend getting a lab panel done. In fact, all of my clients that deal with weight loss resistance, or if I'm working with them and I haven't seen changes no matter what they're doing, this is typically where I will ask them, when was the last time you had a lab panel ran? What did your doctors run? And here's what I'm going to start with. When you go to the doctor, okay, you have got to be an advocate for yourself. And that means you have to understand what labs to get run. And because the doctors are just going to run a general panel. And if you're dealing with these conditions, they're going to tell you just to, it's ridiculous, just stop eating carbs. You're overweight, stop eating carbs and eat 1,200 calories a day. That's what they're going to tell you to do without even looking at the stuff under the hood. So you want to make sure that you, by the way, doctors are not really supposed to be giving diet advice. They're doctors, but they don't know shit about nutrition. Most of them have 15 minutes to spend with you to give you a prescription and tell you to eat less carbs and eat less calories, but that's a whole other episode. Anyways, not all doctors, but most doctors. So hormone imbalances, we want to make sure we are first getting an assessment, figuring out where things are. But things you want to look at are things like insulin levels, cortisol levels, sex hormones, metabolic health, and obviously your weight is going to affect that. But when you're getting tested, you're going to be wanting to look at like your liver, your kidney function, your A1C, insulin levels, AM cortisol levels, thyroid hormones, sex hormones. All of those things are going to help you understand what might be impacting your overall health and could be some of the underlying causes for things. Now, here's where it's like, do you treat or do you, well, let me just save that. We'll save all of that stuff to the end. I want to keep going down the list here because I like to get off on tangents. And like I said, a lot of these things we can kind of overlap. Some of you guys might have even been prescribed some kind of medications to help with hormone imbalances, but doesn't actually address the actual problem is why I'm saying that. So hormone imbalances are number one. Number two is another, probably the biggest one, which is metabolic adaptation. So, and I like to use two words, metabolic adaptation along with metabolic compensation, because I don't think that they're exactly the same thing. In my opinion, metabolic adaptation is essentially how your body adapts to changes in your body weight. So as you lose weight, so if you're somebody that has lost weight and suddenly can't lose weight anymore, or you can't maintain it, like it just seems like no matter what you do, that's your metabolism adapting. Your body is adapting to the change in your actual body composition. And then metabolic compensation, I feel like comes more so from the caloric changes that you make. So when you cut your calories back, your body's going to now adapt to the amount of calories that you're consuming and start to burn less calories. And you'll see that show up, and you won't feel as good in your workouts, energy throughout the day, your gut motility will slow down. You will see some hormone stuff go on. But metabolic adaptation is the second most prevalent thing with weight loss resistance. And then we have some other things that I feel like play a factor in no specific order. But inflammation is a big one. In fact, people that have a lot of inflammation in their body often deal with high cholesterol. Maybe you'll see that show up on your lab work. And typically the doctors are like, start eating more fiber, stop eating more saturated fats, when in reality, your body is like responding to inflammation, because cholesterol is your body's natural way of fighting off inflammation as well. So we need to look at factors that are affecting inflammation. A lot of this comes down to stress levels, which we're going to talk about, some specific diet foods, food intolerances, which we're going to talk about, and just overall how you are working on being. Are you more pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory? So some inflammation is good. That's how our body does build up antibodies and become more resilient to it. But if we have too much inflammation, our body's always trying to play catch up. So if you're like hardcore in the gym, always working out, burning it down, but then you're also working 80 hours a week and you're yelling at your kids, like you're under constant stress, that could really factor. Nutrient deficiencies. This is a big one. And a lot of people, if you focus on a one size approach with your nutrition, whether you're like quote unquote team macros, or you're like quote unquote team clean eating, or you're like going to go down the carnivore route or the paleo route, but you're not addressing overall all of the things, then you could be having some nutrient deficiencies. And that's going to lead to some weight loss resistance, because nutrients help our body actually run our hormones, our metabolism, everything. We need nutrients. Like if all I ate was chicken breast for every meal, every single day, I would be nutrient deficient, even if I was getting enough calories, because I wouldn't be getting in enough vitamins, minerals, enough fats. There's other things that would be missing. And yeah, I could survive, but I would not be thriving. And right now, this is why a lot of people are weight loss resistant. So we want to look at nutrient deficiencies. A very, very, very big one, and this is probably the one where I end up spending the most of my time with my weight loss resistance clients, is gut health. And this is where just slapping a probiotic on might be the worst thing you could do because it could be making things worse. We have to know what's going on with the gut. Do you have any kind of gut dysbiosis? Are you dealing with an intestinal bacterial overgrowth? Are you lacking enzymes? So a lot of people that have a hard time digesting specific foods are lacking enzymes. And a lot of these things come from our foods, but we're not getting enough of them. That's why the nutrient deficiencies play a factor. Stress is a big one, and sleep are a big one. When you guys are under a lot of stress, your cortisol levels are constantly being spiked, and high cortisol levels do promote more fat storage. And in fact, if you deal with a lot of belly fat, the fat cells in your abdomen have 4 times the amount of fat receptors as anywhere else in your body, because that is where all your all your vital organs are. So we want to make sure that we are looking at stress management techniques. We cannot remove stress from our life. I can't tell you that nobody's going to cut you off in traffic, or that your boss isn't going to throw another project on you at work when you're just about ready to leave. I'm not going to tell you that those things aren't going to happen, but I am going to tell you that we have to work on how you react to them and how to understand ways to de-stress. A lot of times it's under committing and over delivering. Sleep. So sleep debt does create hormone disturbances. Along with, when you're sleeping, it helps regulate things. And often people that are sleep deprived also find that they're lacking energy. That's going to spike those hormones. They're going to signal you to want to eat more food. So we want to look at sleep as well. And then finally, which is one that I really don't place a lot of importance on, which is genetics. So there is some genetic predisposition to just being a little bit more weight loss resistant. I don't want to completely take it off the table, because there are some genetically gifted people and there's some genetically obviously not so gifted people. We all have some genes. In fact, me and my dad talked about this on Sunday as we were talking about my own journey and, kind of going into my own personal story. Like, I grew up with my family members being very unhealthy, metabolically just deranged, like every metabolic syndrome you can think of, like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, and very overweight, unhealthy diets. And when I was talking to my dad about my own journey, I was like, I think I just still have a lot of PTSD, like from growing up and like not ever wanting to be sick and unwell, and watching my family just live that lifestyle and not wanting to that. And that was what kind of drove me into fitness and health. And he's like, Cheryl, listen, I think you and I both know you take after my family. Like, just because I do look more like my dad. I have my dad's body type, but again, just a tangent. But genetics do play somewhat a factor, along with even, I want to call it like your environment, like how you're brought up, like the things you do, the things you guys value, the food you guys eat, all of that stuff can play a factor. But all of these things can play a factor into weight loss resistance. And I think the big nuggets that I want you guys to hear are hormones, metabolic adaptation, and the gut health. Those are the 3 biggest ones, because I think the other ones, such as like inflammation, nutrient deficiency, stress, sleep, those can all kind of be put into those 3 or 4 categories, as they do find themselves kind of overlapping in there. So let's talk about what we need to do. All right. So if all of those things resonated with you, if some of them resonated with you, if you're feeling like you don't know where to start, that's what I'm hopefully going to help you with. So how do we address weight loss resistance? All right. So the first things first, I want to start by telling you, like, you're not broken, you're not cursed. Like, you can actually beat this. You can beat this condition. Okay. Does it mean that it's going to require a little bit more effort than the average person? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means that you have to know what to focus on most. And that's why a lot of times in these situations, I try and take control from my clients in the beginning, so that they can bust through the weight loss resistance without having the stress of trying to figure it out. Okay, so the first step is we want to make sure that we get a complete assessment. We need to take a comprehensive approach to your weight loss. So some people can go online, find a calculator, find a plan, drop weight. You're not one of those people if you're listening to this episode and you're resonating with this stuff, right? So we need to take a more comprehensive approach to your nutrition. That means looking at, if you do have labs, we're taking a look at labs. We are looking at a personalized approach to your nutrition and also your training as well, because some people respond very differently to different types of exercise and different volumes of exercise. And that's where it's important to understand your unique needs. So some clients I have found do much better on a lower volume program. Oops, my computer just got unplugged. Sorry about that. A lower volume, more like intense. I don't want to call it intensity, but like just like a lower volume, higher weights on lifting, a little bit more, intensity. They do better with that. Other clients don't respond well to that, and they need more volume, higher reps, maybe a little bit longer, more interval type work. It just really depends on the individual, and we have to look at how your body handles stress. With nutrition, like it's funny because I was going to record an episode on macros, and I'm like, the whole if it fits your macros things is great. It sounds like the perfect thing, right? Oh, I can just eat whatever I want and just make sure it fits my macros. Well, that doesn't always work for everybody, because if there's things going on, we have to look at things like the thermic effect of feeding. We have to look at the gut microbiome, and we have to make sure we're getting enough nutrients, that we're feeding the gut the right things, fiber intake. We have to look at other factors, and some people don't tolerate foods the same way. Not everybody absorbs the same amount of calories. This is a true statement that like genetically caloric intake and absorption are two very different things. So it's important to understand that you have to maybe take a look at some food changes. And oftentimes with my clients, that's what I'll do. Also have to look at appetite. So is this person having a hard time being consistent because of the caloric intake that they need to be on to lose weight? So that can sometimes be a factor. So we want to get a full picture, looking at what you're currently doing, what you've done in the past, with or without success. Looking at stress management is important. And I want to say that this is probably the factor that we don't focus on as much, because it's going to come down to just, I think, the person slowly becoming less reactive to stress. So it just comes down to like, hey, if, somebody came in here and hit me in the head, I'd be pissed off, but I can like let it happen, or I can like go chase them down and like be all mad about it, right? Like, obviously I don't want somebody to come in here and hit me in the head, but that's just like a scenario where I can just show you being less reactive is helpful. I think the only other thing is like really looking at sleep and getting enough sleep, which again isn't always easy, but small steps. Okay, so the first thing is really just getting an assessment. We want to know where you're starting, looking at everything, and then also like what you're willing to change, right? So like willingness to change has to be part of this as well, because I can tell somebody, okay, you're going to start like walking 15,000 steps a day. You're going to be hitting these calories and macros. By the way, you're not eating these foods. And by the way, you're eating more of these foods. And I want you at the gym. But like all of that stuff isn't going to work if the person's like, listen, I've got to work 80 hours a week. I've got to take my 2 kids to sports after school. I ain't got time for all that shit. Like, and I don't like cooking, so like we have to know where a person's at and what they're willing to do to change it, and make sure they're kind of looking at that from a progressive approach, not from a, well, if I can't do everything, I can't do anything. Okay, so the assessment's important. Then we want to start to kind of work at ways to address the weight loss resistance, looking at those different key components. And I'm going to start by talking about looking at the evaluation. Where is this person struggling? Okay, is it a lifestyle-based weight loss resistance where this person just doesn't understand that they need to be moving more, they need to be stressing less, they need to be eating more of these foods? Is it really that simple? Or is it more complicated? So like, are we looking at fixing some of these underlying labs? Looking at the feedback that a person's giving is really important. So things like hunger, cravings, energy throughout the day, gut motility, all of that stuff, to kind of understand where a person's at. Are they responding well to their training? Are they seeing strength improvements? If they've been training for 12 to 16 weeks, are they seeing physical changes in their body? That's kind of a good sign of metabolic health. So we want to be taking a look at all that. And then the gut is really important. So what does that person's poop look like? How frequently are they going? What kind of digestive symptoms do they get? Are they getting bloating, gas when they eat specific foods? Do they notice changes? So looking at all that, so we can kind of really understand what a person needs to change. And the first step is going to be nutrition. And I wish I could tell you all that there is like a magic pill you can take right now. And well, there actually really is. There is a magic pill now, right? It's a GLP-1 receptor, GLP-1 drug, which we can go down. I need to record an episode on those. By the way, I'm not anti-drug. I just think that application of them needs to be there. And for some of my weight loss resistant clients, they can be a great help. So if the lifestyle and behavior changes are there. So the first step is looking at nutrition. And there are some things that we want to take a look at. But diet balance. So we want to make sure we're getting in enough of the fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, fruits. I already said fruits, complex carbohydrates, starchy vegetables. We want to get enough of all of those foods in. We want to look at, I don't want to say eliminating, but minimizing ultra processed foods. And a lot of times what I see with a lot of weight loss resistance is a high reliance on ultra processed foods. Not intentionally. It's just the way that that person has been conditioned to eat because of, their schedule. They don't have a lot of time to cook, their food preferences, whatever it is. And ultra processed foods aren't just things that you're considering like, Doritos or chips or, chocolate and, whatever sausage. I'm also looking at ultra processed foods like a lot of protein bars and, protein powders. Like they're just relying on a lot of ultra processed foods, even though those foods can be healthy. It's just a high reliance on them. So I want to take a look at that as well. Managing macronutrients. So going into meal balance, we need to understand how many macros a person is eating in terms of protein, carbs, and fats. And it's not like you should be eating 125 grams of protein, but it's like, no, are you getting enough protein? Are you staying within a good range of your carbs and fats? And are we seeing that consistently throughout the week so that your body's getting enough nutrients on a regular level? It's like, you can't like fill up your gas tank once and then expect it's going to last you forever, right? Like you got to frequently refill it. Same thing here. We want to be refilling those macros on a daily basis. And then portion control, which is a big one. And a lot of people don't look at this stuff, but looking at ensuring this is part of the diet, like is a person's portion control where we can kind of look at things. Are they getting too much fats, which is typically another big problem I see with weight loss resistance is a very high fat diet. So we want to take a look at that and ensure that we're getting all of those in check with obviously using a food scale for a temporary period of time. The goal here is if you're weight loss resistant, the best way to fix it is to have as much control over what you can control. And your diet is the number one thing you can actually control everything in. So we want to take the reins there. The next thing, as I already mentioned, was exercise, but taking a personal approach to this. Okay, so looking at what you're doing, what might need to change. Some of my clients, I might be taking a look at their movement outside of their exercise. So if you are somebody that does CrossFit in the morning and then you're sitting behind a desk all day, you might need to be adding in some more activity later on in the day. This isn't like double sessions, but if you're inactive all day, you should be doing some lighter activity later in the day. Like that's where maybe a double session isn't a bad thing for general pop, like that's or gen pop, so like thinking about moving more is really important for weight loss resistance. I could actually talk about why all these things help. And this one in particular, I want to talk about from the factor of like the hormones, the insulin levels. These types of things with the diet changes, with the movement changes are really going to help improve insulin sensitivity, bring down your cortisol levels, hopefully help you sleep better. And also help you with recovering from your training. So you're going to build lean muscle tissue, which will help increase your metabolic rate. So we want to really put the emphasis on the things that we have the most control over. And our diet and our training are the two things that work. So even though you might be eating healthy and you might be exercising, you want to make sure that you're putting, like I said, the energy into the things in your diet and your exercise that matter most. And that's where that personalized approach really comes in. So I've got some clients that can lose fat walking 5K steps a day. I've got some clients that have to get up to 15 to 20K steps a day. So it just depends on the person. Okay. So stress management I'm going to be honest, guys, this is going to be hard for everybody. It's hard for me as well. Learning how to manage stress, how to not always be in the future when we feel like we always have things to do. But just being mindful, I can go down the whole, well, are you meditating? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? All of those things are great. If you can do them consistently, you will see great results from that. I guarantee you. But as simple as just taking a few minutes, between things to like just sit with yourself for a second, like not being in a rush to do things, enjoying what you're doing, and not getting hyper reactive to things. Sleep, gold standard is obviously 7+ hours of sleep a night, especially if you struggle with sleep. You struggle to stay asleep. You want to make sure you're probably pushing the 8 to 9 because you're probably not getting good quality sleep throughout the night. And I think the easiest fix here for a lot of people is just to learn how to kind of backtrack from the morning. So, like, whatever time you're waking up in the morning, what time do you have to get to bed in order to get those 7 to 8 hours? And wherever you're at now, somehow tacking on an extra 10 to 15 minutes over time to try and get that sleep in. Sleep is so important. I see a huge difference in my body and in the way I feel when I'm getting good quality sleep. Gut health. All right, gut health is something that, like, again, very personalized approach. You have to know, are you just needing to optimize for gut health, or are you looking for gut repair? So knowing where a person's at with their gut, and most people with weight loss resistance and hormone imbalances likely have some underlying gut issues, and sometimes fixing the gut issues can fix other things. So I'm going to put this one up there in importance just as much as diet and exercise, but diet and exercise often help to fix the gut. So we do want to make sure we're looking at the gut health and looking at maybe enzymes that might be missing, digestive enzymes, probiotics, prebiotics, looking at any kind of dysbiosis, like I already said, and getting those things figured out. And then a couple things that I just want to note that are also very helpful are things like hydration. Oftentimes people that are weight loss are just not drinking enough water. Water is so there is studies that have shown that increased water intake does help with fat lipolysis, which is how our body does release fat, oxidize fat, or release fat to be oxidized or burned for calories. So we do want to make sure we're getting in enough hydration. A good way to test if you're hydrated is looking at your pee. Your pee should be a pale yellow color. If it's dark and murky, it's probably not getting enough hydration. So I think over 100 ounces of water a day should be easy and standard for most people, especially in the summer months. You guys, I got this big old cup here. This thing gets filled up, I don't know, 4 times a day. It doesn't have to be plain water. I think that's the other thing is people are like, water's so boring. So great way to fit a sweet craving is throw a packet of Crystal Light in there. It's easy, so have some diet soda. Like, that's still hydration. It's not just plain water, but your body's getting water with that. It's getting fluids, which is going to be good. I think the most important thing here is when it comes to weight loss resistance, you have to really have a metric or metrics to track, because when we're troubleshooting all of these different things and you're slowly adding on, right? Like maybe one week we're working on like getting your protein intake up. Maybe next week we're working on, okay, we're getting you more fruits and vegetables. When we're adding things on, it's going to help you troubleshoot and figure out which things help the most and what created the most changes. If you're not following a progressive approach to this, you're going to keep literally like starting back at day one, not knowing what's going on. So we do want to make sure we are having some way of tracking progress, not just scale progress, but also what kind of changes that you're making. So this is why keeping a food diary is important, and why using a food scale is important, and why, all of these consistent habits are important, especially if you're dealing with weight loss resistance. You are in control of this condition. You can actually take control of it, but it does require, like I said, more effort and energy than most people are willing to put in. And then the last one that I'm just going to note here is you guys have got to be patient. So if you spent the last 10 years trying to figure out how to lose 10 pounds, don't be in a rush to lose 10 pounds because you wasted 10 years of your life doing it. If you lost 1 pound a week for the next 10 weeks, you're being way more successful than you've been over the last 10 years. So be patient and be persistent. Like don't back down on the habit changes you're making. Keep going with those things. Don't give up on those things and be persistent in those things, because that's going to help you. You just have to be patient with the results. Oftentimes it takes probably 3 to 4 weeks of you being consistent if you're dealing with weight loss resistance, and then all of a sudden your body starts to respond. Oftentimes I find that people give up just before they're about to have a breakthrough. So that's what I got for you guys today. Hopefully this was helpful. The last thing I'm going to offer y'all is if you guys would like an assessment just to kind of see where you're at, what I think that you guys need to focus on the most personally, I will put the link to my metabolic assessment in the show notes for you guys. I always do those. I offer those complimentary to my listeners, anybody that follows me. I consider you guys part of my community, and would gladly give you some feedback on what you might need. And we can always take it from there. So until our next episode, guys, have a great day.